Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this HR and Council Tax Committee meeting. Thank you to all the staff that are staying late for us. I'm going to ask the committee whether they mind if I hand over the chairing of this meeting to Gary Culver. As you can hear, I've got a bit of a breathing problem. And if I keep having to talk, then you won't get anything out of me. Perhaps that's a good idea, but so are you all happy that I'll hand over? Thank you. Thank you. Right. Councillor Culver, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Right, right, everybody. Now the fun really starts. In case there is anybody watching this externally, I think I should give a little bit of an explanation. I am totally blind and therefore not in a position either to run the agenda or see whether anybody wishes to speak. Therefore, Anastasia Simpson is going to fulfil that role on my behalf and keep me briefed. So we'll try to run the meeting as normally as we can, but it won't be totally normal. If it goes well, then it's all down to Anastasia. If it doesn't, then it's Jane's fault for asking me to be vice chair in the first place. So we'll take it from there, but I'm sure it'll go well. So over to you, Anastasia.
Thank you, Chairman. So the first item on the agenda is apologies for absence and any substitutions. Over to you, Bethany.
There have been no apologies for absence for this evening. Thank you.
Item number 2 on the agenda is minutes of the last meeting, and that's pages 1 to 8 on the agenda.
Right, is everybody happy with? So can we have a proposer, please?
We've got Councillor Amos.
Okay, Councillor Amos, seconder, please.
Councillor Morrison.
Councillor Morrison. All those in favour?
So we've got 5 councillors in favour.
Any against? No, that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest.
Do we have any declarable interests? Councillor Stevenson.
Do I say this every time that I'm a member of a union, or every time? Yes, okay, I am a member of the CW Union. CW, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
There's Councillor Morrison.
Councillor Morrison.
Do I also need to then mention I'm a member of Unite? Is that appropriate? Yeah? Okay, thank you.
Agenda item 4, questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38.
Do we have any?
I'm just checking with Bethany. None.
None, that's fine. Moving on.
Agenda item number 5. This is a report of the Assistant Director Partnership.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the purpose of the report that members have in front of them is to provide an update on a number of key HR activities. These include the pending pay review, also the pay award that's not yet been implemented, the procurement of a new HR and payroll system, and also the introduction of a new employee benefit. I'll take each of the items as they are taken in the report, if I may. So the procurement of the new payroll and HR system. So we currently have a system called Team Spirit, which is due to be retired at the end of the financial year. So that's March 2024. And what that means is it will no longer be supported by our provider. And on this basis, we've had to look at other options. One of the key objectives for the new system will be to look at the functions of human resources and payroll and look at how we might automate some of those administrative functions, as well as obviously its core functionality in terms of employees, the employee record, and also payroll. In line with the expectations set out in the Council's constitution, we've identified a framework agreement and also looked at a contract period of 4 years. So having undertaken a detailed shortlisting process, MHR iTrent have come out as the only supplier that can specifically meet all of our requirements as outlined in our specification document. And it's worth noting that MHR iTrent currently delivers services to 47% of local authorities. Again, it's worth noted that of the authorities in Essex, a number of them use the system, and therefore it's considered that it may provide further value for money opportunities or greater flexibility in terms of working in the future. Contracts are due to be signed shortly, and then obviously we'll be looking at a very detailed implementation programme, which will result in a dual payroll process to ensure that obviously we will be paying people correctly, and we will be going live on the 1st of April 2024. May I take any questions on that part of the report, Chair? Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'll move on to the pending pay review, and part of that is the procurement of the Infinistat system. So the committee will recall that they've previously asked officers to engage the services of the East of England Local Government Association, and that's to carry out a review which is service-wide of TDC's pay structure. So specifically looking at the whole of our staffing establishment, and that will be in the context of our neighbouring authorities and also those regionally, and also looking at our professional and technical areas, and this will be an extension of the work that's already been undertaken by ELGA previously. And the work that was undertaken previously looked at some of those areas where we've applied market forces in those areas. So what we'll be doing is looking at formal recommendations for corrective action, and that's if applicable. But we'll be looking both now, 3 years' time, and also 5 years' time to enable us to look at our salary position in the longer term. The first part of that work stream is, as I mentioned, the procurement and setup of the Infinistat system, so that ELGA has the required access to TDC's pay data. So officers have been working on that, and we've now loaded our data into the system, so it's now there ready to go. It's worth noting that the procurement of that system will allow us to access that data in the future as well across other local authorities, so it will allow us to undertake our own benchmarking in the future once we've completed this piece of work. So as I mentioned, we are looking for high-level findings and possible recommendations, and we will bring those to a future meeting of the HR committee in the new year. Any questions? Thank you very much, Chair. So the next thing I'd like to talk to members about is the introduction of a new employee benefit. And as a result of the cost of living pressures, we've recognised that our employees, like everyone else, may be struggling with their finances. So supporting the financial well-being of our employees is one of the most effective ways that we can improve their circumstances. This position is endorsed by the Chartered Institute of Personnel and Development, because they believe that all workplaces should offer financial well-being support to employees. Historically, the authority has been in a contract with NABER, which was a financial well-being service for its employees. However, that company was bought out by its biggest competitor, Salary Finance. So HR officers, Jo and her team, have undertaken some research of the salary finance market to ensure that we're giving our employees value for money and the best service possible from obviously a reputable finance company. And the chosen provider is the largest employee finance wellbeing provider in the UK, helping over 4.5 million employees, and their services are used by not only private sector but public sector and not-for-profit organisations, so they're very well known. They're also endorsed by the Public Services People Managers Association, that's the PPMA. The provider offers a range of different options to suit each individual employee, and this can be a loan, an advance, savings, and also financial education. The percentage rates offered are more favourable than high street lenders, and they also give the employee more flexibility because they're able to make payments from their salary. What we intend to do is sign up to a 12-month agreement with Salary Finance, and obviously that will be kept under review. If we're happy at the end of that, we will be looking to extend that service for our employees on a 12-monthly rolling basis. Any questions, Chair?
Thank you, Chairman. Katie, do we have any indications how many people might be benefiting from this scheme?
Are you happy for me to answer, Chair? Thank you. So this will be available to all employees, Councillor Guglielmi, and it will be also, we're looking to offer it to members. We tend to deal with staff at the moment on on an individual basis. So if anybody is looking, at additional support, we will signpost on that basis. It should be noted that this offer is part of a whole suite of initiatives that we offer on financial wellbeing. So there's a financial wellbeing arm of the Employee Assistance Programme. We work with a number of our partners to do financial education, webinars and sessions, and also we'll be continuing to keep that under review in terms of making sure that we're able to offer, as much support to our employees as possible.
Is there a budget allocated for that?
So there's no cost to this service, and there is no cost other than officer time to the other initiatives I mentioned. Obviously, there will be the officer time in terms of payroll, setting up any payments, etc., from salaries, and also HR colleagues keeping this service under review for our employees, but there is no cost to employees or to the authority. So the last thing I'd just like to talk to the committee about is the pending pay award, because as I mentioned, the 23-24 pay award is still outstanding. So members may recall that the authority, as part of the National Employers Arrangements for pay and conditions of service, whereby these awards are negotiated nationally, and that's between local authority representatives and trade unions. A full and final pay offer was made by national employers in February 2023, and members can find the full details of that pay offer on page 13 of their report pack. Two of the trade unions have called for renegotiation at this stage, and one of whom has a current ballot of its members for industrial action. So we are not yet at the point of agreement. However, that is due to conclude late October. For the pay award to be implemented, we need 2 of the 3 unions to agree the position. So what we are looking to do, as soon as we have that agreement moving forward, and it's really important to note that national employers continue to advise very strongly not to implement that pay award on an individual basis, because obviously it will undermine that collective bargaining process and also could expose the council to legal challenge. And on that basis, we'll be waiting till we've got agreement, but once we have that, we'll work very, closely with payroll colleagues to get that implemented for our employees as soon as possible. And that will also include the back pay arrangements as well, because obviously it will be backdated to the 1st of April 2023. Any questions on that?
Thank you. Who are your unions at Unison? Who are the other two?
Unite
Yeah.
and GMB.
Oh, and do you know, how is it split, the membership? Do you know?
So the authority, we as an authority only recognise Unison as our union, but obviously nationally there is GMB, Unite and Unison.
Right, okay, thank you. No, thank you, thanks.
Thank you.
I'm just going to read the recommendation to the committee. So it's recommended that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee note the content of this report, including the officer decisions, already in consultation with the Chair of Human Resources and the Council Tax Committee, and the decision taken by the portfolio holder for Finance and Governance, as outlined under the previous relevant decisions heading of this report.
Right, on that basis, is the committee content?
Moving on to item number 6 on the agenda, report of Assistant Director Partnerships A2, Alcohol and Drugs at Work Policy, pages 19 to 34, and Jo Williams-Lotter is going to present this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Thank you. It's a great pleasure that I'm here today to introduce to you the updated Alcohol and Drugs at Work Policy. As I say, the purpose of the report is to update you on the review of as it was called, the Alcohol, Drugs and Substance Abuse Policy in line with identified best practice and employment legislation. The Council is committed to providing a safe and professional environment for all employees and service users. As part of that commitment, it is important that all employees and everyone who works here on our behalf is clear about what is expected of them when it comes to alcohol and drugs at work. Employees who come to work under the influence of alcohol or drugs can be a risk to both themselves and to others. The Council has responsibility for preventing and controlling the misuse of alcohol and drugs at work for the benefit of the workforce in general and the community to whom we serve. The Council is committed to supporting employees who admit they have a problem with alcohol or drugs, and that is, I think, is key to where the movement of the policy is going. We really want to show that commitment. The original policy was developed in 2007, although there has been regular reviews over the years. But, at that time, the Council was more tolerant of drinking at work. And I think as a whole, that was sort of what community was expecting us to do. However, over the years, the Council and society as a whole has naturally shifted and changes its attitude to drinking at work. As such, there has been a comprehensive review of the policy, and the rules around what's expected from employees have expanded and clarified. Just want to point out the reason why I haven't been able to sort of show normally we show in italics where the changes have been. It's because it's been it's changed dramatically. Just to take you through the main changes, obviously we've changed the title to not just call about misuse, but we're also expanding, so looking at if people have got prescribed drugs, and so it's just about, and it's also drinking, so it's not just about misuse, it's also about that. We've also looking at it as to take into account that now we've got people working from home. So it's not about just coming into the premises. So, it's quite easily, those boundaries of blurring of, working and and socialising and being at home. So that's obviously has to be taken into consideration. Also, throughout the policy, the use of drugs is, it's not just about substances, and we're looking at sort of the terminology has been changed throughout the policy, so that has been picked up. When I looked at the policy, it was a lot of support and sort of more guidance. So what I've done is we've split the policy. So there is actually going to be a suite of guidance for managers and employees. So the policy has been sort of shortened to allow that, but there's going to be there's a whole support there to complement that. I think some of the rules obviously have changed, so we have strengthened that, as we said, to be a lot clearer of what our expectations about, drinking, when having under the influence of drink and alcohol. So I think that sort of takes through sort of the main points of the changes. It is, want to be clear that the policy applies to all employees and those people who work for us, so it's also agency staff, volunteers and contractors. But it does not apply to elected members who will have their own separate guidance and policies. So just want to just to conclude, it's recommended that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee approves and adopts the Council's updated alcohol and drugs at work policy. Thank you.
Questions?
Carlo and Councillor Stevenson.
Right, Councillor Guglielmi.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Jeff, for your presenting the policy. To the question I was going to ask, you've really incorporated in your presentation. One, the old policy, and two, the fact that people are working from home. That was something that was on the raise. I've got two questions. One is there a problem in the organisation? I'm not aware that there is, but I'd be interested to have your thoughts on that. And the other is could we have sight of the previous policy at all? Maybe it can be circulated. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. No, I don't believe there is a problem. Obviously, when I came into post, I've been into post since May. Part of my role is to review all of the policies and procedures, and that's going to be, going forward is what we're doing. What I did notice is the reason we've identified is there is some, it wasn't I think it's clear I think that because people are working from home, and I think there could be. So I think, I think before there is a problem, I think it's good to actually set that expectation and to ensure that we don't get down. If there's staff know that we are committed to supporting people, then they'll come forward and we'll be able to support them. So this is a very positive message. But as I said, we're not concerned that we've got a problem with drink or drugs, but as I say, we're being proactive about that. And I'm more than happy to circulate the previous policy. I mean, I've got it here. I was trying to highlight all the different changes that I made, and I was just colouring it all over it. But I'm more than happy we can share that after the meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. On your policy on page 31, it says absence from work for counselling and treatment should be recorded as sick leave. Because this to me seems a bit of a barrier to getting help, because if you think, oh no, my sick leave's going to go up the spout because I'm taken, maybe they've gone to the NHS, the doctors refer them for a week's rehabilitation, they might not think, well, I can't go because it's going to go down as sick absence. Do they have the opportunity to take it as unpaid special leave or something like that?
Obviously, yes. But, however, what I would like to say is what we try to do with sick leave is, just because someone we don't just, obviously we've got our sickness absence procedure and it's got triggers and so forth, but we're not just looking, oh, you've met the trigger, We are very much, I'd prefer people to, if they are sick and they need, then they'll be classified as sick and they get the support they need. So I think part of that is actually looking at our communication and working with our staff so they appreciate that actually, we are there to support. And it is, I must say I've worked in other organisations and when I was researching this, there's not all, employers are as supportive as we are, with trying to support people who've got, addiction and alcohol problems. So we just need to make sure we get that message out that, whether you're sick, unpaid leave, whatever suits you actually at that moment in time will be flexible to support you.
Lovely. Thank you. Just one more, please. Thank you. When you do this new review, does it then get sent out to all employees so they can see it?
Yes, it does. We sent it out, and actually, in particular for this policy, I've been working with some managers and talking through what I'm intending to do. And I think, especially as we've updated some of the rules, my intention is to actually print the rules out and actually get managers to share it in one-to-ones with staff, because we've slightly changed it, and people might have been here some time, they might not know and be still working. And so we don't want to just suddenly be sort of punitive and say, you know, crap. We need to make sure that it's communicated to everybody. And having the support, we've got the support for the EAP. We've got, I mean, the other thing that I added was a lot more sort of the support that people can have. And obviously we'll have the employee guidance, which I want, you know, that we'll make sure freely available. So it'll be available on our intranet, but it'll also be available for some of our sites that don't have that so readily. We'll make sure it's on notice boards and so forth.
Lovely. Thank you very much. No, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Good.
Thank you, Chairman. Just something, looking at the end of the paper on what it says, supports and source of information. Obviously, that some of them are quite confidential and things, but what's the process of choosing those particular sources of support? And do they share with you stats if somebody, not by name, but how many people, if any, have contacted them?
Yeah. Oh, she the list of support that we gave was just a flavour, and it will be updated because obviously support changes. I mean, I've just been supporting an employee who's got a gambling addiction, and he's just been sharing with me a really useful sort of free support. So I'm thinking, oh, I need to include that into some policies and whatever. So we will be constantly updating and ensuring, and I think the employee guidance and managers guidance will have a bigger and more sort of fluid. We'll be changing what support is available. On the information we get, EAP will not, there's obviously confidentiality. We will get information about the, you know, we've got a new provider now, so we're actually meeting with them in the beginning of November. They will give us how much contact people have had, but obviously people, because it's for people and their families, it might not necessarily be our employees who've made the contact. They just need to say they're coming through tendering district council. So we will be able to have some statistics, but I think it's going to be quite hard to know whether, say, if it's our employee, whether it's a member, or whether it's a member, you know, of their family. So we will get stuff, and hopefully maybe at the next committee we can share, you know, what those statistics we've got, and you know, so that we can actually look and be a bit more proactive if there is any gaps or if there's anything that we see that there's any triggers that we need to focus on.
Can you help me? Any further questions?
No questions.
Right, well, thank you very much for the report, Jo. Jo did read the recommendation at the end of her report, but I think it might be useful if we heard it again, please, Anastasia.
Thank you, Chairman. So the recommendation for this report, it is recommended that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee approves and adopts the Council's updated alcohol and drugs at work policy.
I have a proposal.
Thank you, Chairman. We're moving on to item 7 on the agenda. This is the joint report of the Assistant Director of Partnerships and Assistant Director Finance and IT, A3, update to threats and violence at work policy, pages 35 to 50 in the agenda. So I'm going to ask Claire Lewis to present this report.
Good evening. I just wanted to start by explaining that I'm currently the Care Line and Community Manager, but my previous role was Assurance and Resilience, and I covered health and safety, which is why I've written this report as well. So it's linked with health and safety. So the purpose of the report is to update you on the current threats and violence at work policy. It was formerly known as the Violence at Work policy. And you can see the highlights in the document have been put into red, so you can see where it's been amended for ease of reference for you. Okay, the Council undertakes a number of statutory duties that bring employees into contact with members of the public. At times, employees are at risk of conflict with the public due to the nature of their responsibilities. The Council is committed to taking positive action to reduce the risk to its employees and acts on potential violence and verbal abuse. We have carried out additional training in the last few months in relation to the some incidents that we've had where members of the public seem to be a little bit more aggressive than usual since COVID. So we've provided additional training to our staff in relation to that. And that was the conflict resolution training, and we've got some more training coming up for the staff that were unable to make that training. And so this training was carried out in response to issues that have been brought forward to staff to the health and safety team, which I previously managed. The policy incorporates the standards outlined in the newly developed Unison Violence at Work Charter, and some of those points are listed in the document for you. And it says staff are encouraged to report violence incidents, and they're told how to do this. They do this by filling in an online form that's on our intranet. And the way we promote that across the authority, our health and safety officer will mention that when he does his inspections. We have health and safety rep meetings every quarter, and that's rolled out at those meetings. Those health and safety representatives then go and say, obviously then go and put that into all their meetings, so that gets across the authority. And then it's also mentioned at the induction process where the health and safety officer does inductions for all new staff, so it's mentioned at those as well. So it's quite widely put out there that it's not acceptable to put up with violence at work and how they should go about reporting that if necessary. The Violence at Work Charter also says that obviously risk assessment should be conducted for staff in vulnerable situations. These are a standard, and these are checked by a health and safety officer. Training is in place to ensure staff are aware of appropriate way to deal with threatening situations, as I've already mentioned. And the policy relates to obviously tendering district council employees, contractors and voluntary workers. The policy is updated to take part of the suite of support available in frontline employees and will be subject to regular review in line with legislative changes and best practice. With this in mind, it's recommended that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee approves and adopts the Council's Threats and Violence at Work policy and notes the delegation afforded to the Assistant Director of Partnerships to make any minor amendments to this policy necessary as a result of the legislation, national guidance or best practice. And if I could invite any questions in relation to this document. Thank you.
Any questions? Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you. On page 47 of the policy, right at the very bottom, it says any legal action taken against a perpetrator of violence must be taken by the individual employee. What about their legal costs? What happens there? And like it says over the page, it says that the council's solicitor will help out. So because it's the individual, how do they get help for themselves, and who pays the legal costs and things like that?
I cannot, unless Anastasia can answer that.
I think with this one, it will probably depend on the circumstances, but we would initially take legal advice from our in-house team.
Right.
So I think at that point we would be obviously talking to our individual team. Claire, have we had any cases where we've had to take prosecution or anything? I can't think of any cases either, but as a good employer and in terms of best practice, we have to have the policy there in case we have an issue.
Okay.
But as I say, I've worked for the council now for 16 years and I can't think of any case we've taken forward. And if Claire, obviously as our health and safety officer, doesn't know of any cases, I think it would be extremely rare.
Okay.
But just comment, I mean, I've been here 35 years and I've never had any instances of where that's happened. So I think we are a very proactive employer. So obviously we do quite a lot to ensure these situations are, you know, that they've got enough training, they're aware of what's happened, and, you know, we do a lot around that. So, you know, it's good that it doesn't happen.
Yeah. I do, yes, please. On page 50, at the second bullet, or the third bullet point down, it says respite. The employee will be entitled to time off to recover if this is considered appropriate. Who considers that it's appropriate?
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. I'll let you, I'll reply if I may. So I just want to pick up on your earlier question as well. So just going back to that, I can give you a example of where we have had staff who have felt under threat of violence. We have worked very closely with police colleagues to ensure that we have the appropriate protections in place. And I can give at least one example where actually, you know, we have used police colleagues to enforce certain action to ensure safety of our staff. And as I say, that has been on the basis of, you know, threats of violence. So I just wanted to let you know that there is that very proactive, close working with our statutory partners to protect our staff too.
Okay.
Sorry, in terms of your other question, you were asking about whether it's, you know, who determines it's appropriate, whether somebody comes into the workplace or not. So a view will be given based on the circumstances, based on any medical advice that's been received. Obviously, if somebody's seen a medical professional and they have considered the person is not well enough to be at work.
Okay, yeah.
Also, we will look at we will risk assess it. So again, we will work with health and safety colleagues, we will work with their management, and actually we may make a decision that we feel that the employee should take some time out of the workplace to ensure their welfare, or, you know, to recover from the incident, for example. So it's very much either, you know, we're guided by professional advice. That could be a medical practitioner, it could be occupational health,
Right.
and we will also work together to determine the appropriateness of somebody remaining in the workplace.
Okay, lovely. Thank you. No, all good. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you say that they have to report it online in the first instance? So my question is, from reporting, what is the time scale from their manager or whoever it goes to act on this report?
Okay, yeah, so there are several ways. I mean, there's an online form that comes through to the health and safety team, and that's actioned as soon as they come into our email box. Obviously, they're flagged up, and that would be actioned by the health and safety officer straight away within like at least 2 days. We, you know, we don't sit on them or anything like that. They can also, as you say, they can go to their manager, and their manager can report it to us if they don't feel that they want to do that. So we do get them direct, not necessarily through the form. They can come through our normal email box. If they don't want to fill the form out. There's lots of different ways really, but the form is encouraged because it kind of prompts the information that we need to be able to follow that through really, rather than keep pinging back emails backwards and forwards asking for more information. It just kind of prompts the information we need.
Councillor Guglielmo.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Not sure if this is an operational question or not, and I should probably know the answer, but officers with enforcement functions, they're obviously more exposed than others, and the other which come to mind are people who work in the housing section. Do they get given any extra training on how to deal with things? And I know, for example, in planning, if there is a site to be visited where there is potentially conflict on there, that's not reflected in the policy. That's what I'm saying. It's probably an operational thing rather than a generic policy. Am I right?
I mean, the level of training needed will be picked up in the risk assessment for that job role. So all of those enforcement job roles will have a risk assessment for their particular task, and the level of training provided to that staff would be in response to that risk assessment. So depending on the job role, they could receive different levels of training.
I
was just also going to mention to you, Councillor Guglielmi, that we also look at our PPE, so our protective clothing and everything, for officers that, you know, are out and they could enter into dangerous situations. So our antisocial behaviour officers actually have stab vests and they have body-worn cameras, so they have the same pieces of kits that you would find, you know, with a police officer. So we take this very seriously. I think we've also got Skyguard. We've got a system as well, you know, which what happens with that a Skyguard, if say somebody encounters a difficult situation, they can press an alarm, so we will know back at the office that, you know, we've got, you know, an officer in distress or anything like that, and we can, you know, respond appropriately. So we have a whole range of different things that we can utilise if required. Thank you.
If I can just make one more comment about that. I mean, that does tie in what Anastasia said. I mean, the risk assessment for each job role will also assess whether they are classed as a lone worker, and this policy ties in with the lone worker policy, and that's where they have their lone worker device, which is the pendant that Anastasia's just mentioned. So yeah, it depends on the job role, but they do have these items.
Recommendation at the end of her report, if we could have it again, please. Anastasia.
Thank you, Chairman. It is recommended that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee A. approves and adopts the Council's updated Threats and Violence at Work policy, and B. notes the delegation afforded to the Assistant Director of Partnerships to make any future minor amendments to this policy necessary as a result of legislative, national guidance or best practice. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. We're now moving on to item 8, which includes the exclusion of press and public. So I'm just going to ask if the live stream is still on.